It only takes a second. It means a lot to me. Tap subscribe and in the comments write your city and your age, so I can understand my audience. Let's begin. I learned how small decisions sound in hospital halls. The nurse's shoes scuffed the linoleum like a clock. I was folded into the corner of the family room, pretending to tie my shoe, listening. Make sure she takes that pill tonight, my sister Cassidy told the nurse, voice low and practiced. My sister Cassidy said, double it if she wanders or gets confused. It felt like a contract signed in whispers. My grandmother Evelyn didn't answer. Her hands lay open on the blanket, thin as old paper. The room smelled of antiseptic and lilies, clean things that tried to hide truth. I stepped around the corner and Cass looked up with a smile that knew how to perform. There you are, my sister Cassidy said, bright as a stage light. We missed you at the toast. She touched Evelyn's shoulder then smoothed a scarf, like she was arranging props. I didn't reply. I watched people who love to be loved. I watched Cass lean forward and press Evelyn's shoulders in a way I never had. She's just tired, my sister Cassidy said too fast. These evenings wear on her. Her voice was thin and practiced. Later, when I offered to take Evelyn home, my sister Cassidy said she'd already arranged a nurse. She sounded so kind. She sounded like a person who had rehearsed kindness until it matched her face. That drive home felt like moving through a dream with the radio off. Streetlights smeared across wet pavement. I remember the way my reflection kept glancing at me through the windshield. A stranger in my own skin. Sleep wouldn't come that night. My head filled with the clipped rhythm of Cassidy's words, the way she had pulled Evelyn's chair as if it were a costume. I had watched that smile do its work for years. I had let it. 2 weeks later, everything she'd staged was on loop. I woke to messages I shouldn't have seen. A video tribute to Cassidy had been posted, edited like the truth had been retold to flatter a storybook character. There were shots of her on stage, lights catching her hair, and then clips of Evelyn in the hospital, softened, cropped, set to music. Comments swelled. What a devoted daughter, so selfless, so patient. My face appeared once in the background, blurred, as if I were an extra in someone else's life. I shut my laptop and felt my room shrink. I told myself to breathe. I told myself to ignore it. But later that afternoon my cousin Lena texted. We found something. Didn't know whether to tell you. There was no shame in the message, only the way people pass fragile things along like glass. I didn't wait. I left my apartment with a half-drunk mug on the counter, and walked until the sky looked the color of old paper. The cafe on the corner poured a latte and the barista asked gently, You okay after the hospital thing? I forced a smile because I am good at small things. Inside I was a different kind of loud. When Lena slid the envelope across her kitchen table, her fingers trembled in a way that made me look twice. Found it behind a dresser, Lena said. She looked down then up at me. Wrapped in cloth. She kept it that way. I reached for the paper with hands that didn't trust themselves. The handwriting was shaky, the ink faded, but the sentence punched right through the years. Guard your silence now. Let them think I'm fading. When the moment comes, tell the truth. My grandmother Evelyn had written it. My grandmother Evelyn said those words with a hand that shook and an honesty I had never thought I'd need. I pressed the note to my chest. Proof feels like weight. Proof sits in your palm and you suddenly hear the world too clearly. I scanned the letter, saved copies, photographed it from every angle as if the camera would negotiate with fate. I found the old key in a drawer where she'd hidden it years ago, the kind of place people think to look only when the story matters. The safety deposit box door screeched like metal waking. I slid the original into a new envelope and locked it away again. Final, simple, tidy. Not dramatic, just irreversible. That night the city sounded different. Rain hit the pavement like a punctuation mark. I sat with a mug of coffee gone flat and pulled out my old journal, pages stained with adolescent ink and irritation. I traced the dates, attendances, hospital calls, social posts. A pattern was there, neat as a line on graph paper. Edits, a crafted tribute, a narrative shaped for praise. They had been rewriting history to make Cassidy the hero and me a ghost. I didn't tell Lena everything. I didn't call anyone. I typed an email to a lawyer in the morning. I need clarity on POA and prior will. I attached the scan note and then deleted the first version because fear still sat on my shoulder like a heavy bird. Not yet, I told myself. Not tonight. The invitation came the next afternoon. A family tribute at the community hall. It would mean so much if you were there. Cassidy's assistant wrote, the kind of message that keeps a smile folded into it. I read it twice. I slid into my coat with the letter folded inside my bag. I kept my hands steady. I rehearsed nothing. I had decided not to vanish anymore. I had decided that silence had been a choice I no longer recognized as mine. At the door of the tribute, people welcomed us into warm lights and politely placed plates. Cass greeted everyone like a queen. Cameras clustered without camera's shame. The sound of cutlery, the hush of a crowd leaning in. These were the sounds of a performance. My mouth tasted like a warning. I moved through the room holding a small flash drive in my palm like a heartbeat. I had recorded things in case someone needed to hear them. I walked onto that stage with the drive sweating against my fingers. I stood there, and for once my voice carried without needing to be loud. My grandmother Evelyn had taught me that silence can be sacred. Her paper had taught me patience. Now the decision belonged to me. Wait until the right moment, or let the quiet break open and spill everything. Tonight, people were watching for applause. I watched for truth. The hall was full of eyes and cameras, and a single truth waiting in my pocket. Would I let it out? Or would I fold it back inside me like every other thing they'd stolen? I felt the weight of the flash drive like a small, hot stone. My throat was dry. The applause had just tapered. A polite rustle like someone smoothing a tablecloth. I stood very still and listened to the scrape of chairs, the quiet clearing of throats, the mechanical hum of a distant projector. The room smelled of coffee and perfume. It smelled like the kind of night that pretends everything is ordinary. I moved forward because my legs moved before my thoughts could stop them. The stage lights made everyone look kind in a forgiving way. My sister Cassidy walked toward me with the practiced ease of someone stepping into a photograph. There she is, my sister Cassidy said, voice bright, soft like the pages of a children's book. She touched my elbow as if to guide me into a picture frame. Her hand felt like a handshake that had been polished for years. I did not smile. I walked past her and felt a dozen small cameras angle toward my face. Someone handed me a folded program. The host smiled with teeth that glinted under light. We're so glad you could join us, the host said. I held the drive in my hand and felt its edges like a promise or a threat. I had rehearsed nothing. I had only the paper from my grandmother and the scan saved on a secure account. That was the plan. Invisible, irrefutable, slow. I had rehearsed a different thing in the bathroom mirror on the way in. I had practiced the kind of face that makes people believe you were always calm. I had told myself to breathe in 4 counts, hold for 4, release for 4. That method works for heartbeats, not for lies. Behind the crowd, my cousin Lena caught my eye and slid me a paper napkin folded into a triangle. Her look said now. I tucked it into my palm. We had an unspoken map between us. She had found the note. She knew I had the drive. We were a small conspiracy in a room full of witnesses. When I sat at the table, the fork vibrated slightly against the plate. Someone played a happy string instrumental from a phone. I ate and listened. I watched Cassidy at the head table, her laugh precise, her chin lifted, the way she kept reaching for the microphone when people talked about Evelyn's kindness. She was always so patient, my sister Cassidy said into the mic. And the crowd said yes in the way crowds say yes. Their nods folded like paper cranes, pretty obedient. I thought of my grandmother's handwriting. I thought of the line, guard your silence now. Let them think I'm fading. When the crowd lifted their glasses for a toast, their faces opened like flowers. I rose because standing with a glass kept my motions ordinary. My hand found the drive and the napkin. I walked onto the small platform at the front and waited. The room went softer, like someone turned down the volume on the world. We wanted to celebrate Evelyn tonight, the event coordinator said, voice smooth like satin. Cassidy's smile was a blade wrapped in ribbon. I felt the edges. I felt the years of cut corners, of edits and staged moments. I felt them like a film spliced to hide a cut. My mouth did not tremble. I told myself it would not. I held the drive under my palm so no one could see. I have something to say, I began. The phrase sounded small, almost shy. People looked up, curious. My sister Cassidy's eyes narrowed for a fraction and then spread wide. Practiced surprise on the surface. Go on, she mouthed, But her lips did not move the way truth moves. She moved like someone reciting lines. I loved my grandmother, I said plainly. The sentence landed and found its space. I spent afternoons sweeping her kitchen, learning her recipes, listening to the stories she told about driving across town for a summer job, about the medals tucked away in a drawer. My grandmother Evelyn told me things she couldn't say out loud later. She trusted me with a paper she wrote by hand. She told me to keep it. She told me to wait. A ripple of polite murmurs passed through the hall. Cameras angled. Cassidy's smile stiffened. Someone clapped once, the sound that tries to fill an awkward pause. I pulled the paper from my bag and held it high enough for people to see the faded ink. Their faces changed the way light shifts on old photographs. Some softened, some hardened. My grandmother Evelyn wrote, "Guard your silence now. Let them think I'm fading." The words hung like a bell. I watched them fall. I had recorded a longer message on the drive. That recording was not a shriek. It was a quiet, steady file. It had voices, names, a nurse's admission, and a clip of Cassidy's conversation. It had the sound of scheduling and the sound of a pharmacy label. It had the small practical proof that shows what words alone sometimes cannot. I told them I would play it. "No," my sister Cassidy said in a voice that tried to be gentle. "Please not here." She looked at me like a woman who believes the world will bend to a better story if she asks softly. "Please don't make this about." "It is about her," I replied. My voice did not break. "It is about Evelyn." The room grew still. People leaned forward as if trying to catch a small, falling thing before it hit the floor. I inserted the drive into the laptop and pressed play. The first seconds were a hiss. Then the nurse's voice came through, muffled but clear enough. "Double it if she wanders. Make sure she sleeps." The sound seemed to vibrate the lights. Camera clicked. A woman at the next table gasped. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." My sister Cassidy's face lost its practiced glow. Her fingers dug into the tablecloth. I watched people rearrange the story they had assumed. Some faces broke into anger, some into disbelief. The room was dividing itself like a map. "That's edited," my sister Cassidy said quickly. "You can't." Her words fell like a hand grabbed midair. I had anticipated that line. I had thought of every small defense she might use. I had brought more than one file. I had a bank of messages and a timeline, receipts, and a photo of Evelyn's medication schedule with dates. "Where did you get this?" someone asked from the back. Lena stood then and said, "From her drawer." "From the paper she asked to be kept." Her voice was steady. My grandmother's paper sat on the lectern like a tiny altar. Proof sits like a thing that will not lie. They called for a short break because rooms need time to reorient. People clustered into hushed groups. Cassidy moved toward me like a shadow that knows every room. "You could ruin everything," my sister Cassidy whispered. "You don't understand what this will do to Mom." Her breath smelled of the lemon soap she used. Her eyes were urgent. "Think about the family." "I thought about Evelyn," I said. "I thought about what she told me. She wanted the truth." She reached out and touched my sleeve. For a second I felt the old tug of being the younger sister pushed into a smaller life. Then I remembered the way Evelyn's hand had closed around mine when she handed me the paper. She had chosen me. "You could have come to us quietly," my sister Cassidy said. "We could have handled it." Her voice was always an offer shaped like a trap. "Handling it quietly meant hiding it," I replied. "I couldn't do that." My voice had an edge now. A few people glanced over. The room hummed like a beehive. At the doorway, cameras were already uploading the first clip to social networks. I thought of how stories mutate once out in the open. I thought of how truth sometimes needs a small shove to be seen. I thought of my grandmother, whose letters taught me patient courage. I folded my hands and whispered, "We'll give them the facts, not a verdict. Let this be evidence, not spectacle." The idea was simple and cold. It fit like a coat that was the right size. We sat back down for the second half. People looked at Cassidy differently now. Some avoided her eyes. Others watched her with pity. I felt the room tilting in slow motion. The night could still be contained. Or it could unravel. The drive sat in my bag like a seed. I had planted it deliberately. Now I waited to see what would grow. The recordings would spread faster than apologies, But somewhere in the hum of phones there would be one person who couldn't be bought, and she knew everything. Would they listen before she was silenced? The question lived in my chest like a stone. My phone buzzed with names I loved and names I did not. Clips spread faster than we could breathe. The recording had fingerprints on it now. People had opinions instead of facts. My sister Cassidy called my name in the evening like a verdict and then hung up. My cousin Lena texted, "They're saying you edited it." My jaw clenched so hard I felt my teeth ache. I hit back with one word: I didn't. The next morning the house was a theater of small shocks. My mother June opened the door in slippers and lipstick. "We need to talk," my mother June said, voice even practiced for relatives. Her eyes were bright and wet. She stepped inside like someone walking through fog. I watched the way she hovered by the kettle. The kitchen smelled like burnt toast and old coffee. "People are talking," my mother June said. "Please calm down." Her hands folded around a mug. She looked like she was holding herself together with silicone. I had not expected my mother to come so early. I had expected silence or cold shoulders or legal letters. I had not expected her to look so tired. "Mom," I said, "this is about Evelyn." I placed the folded note on the table like a small flag. She wanted the truth. The mug clinked. "She wouldn't want us to fight like this." "She wanted peace," my mother June replied. "Not this spectacle." Her voice trembled. "Think about Chloe. She named my niece like a prayer. You could ruin everything." Her eyes searched mine for surrender. The name Chloe was a soft thing that pulled at me. My niece's laugh echoed in my head. I swallowed the urge to tell my mother everything I had already done. I did not tell her about the pharmacy receipts, the nurse's night logs Lena had copied, about the voicemail labeled with a date. My sister Cassidy organized quickly. She found a lawyer who smelled like new money and old excuses. "We can file a suit for defamation," my sister Cassidy said in a meeting room bright with plants and cold coffee. Her voice was honey on glass. The lawyer opened a folder of legalese. "If we can prove the audio is manipulated, we can write this." Cass smiled in a way I had seen all my life. Practiced, contagious, weaponized. I watched them plan like surgeons, neat and precise. At the same time, strangers sent messages with questions and hate. A woman I had never met wrote, "You ruined a memorial." Another wrote, "She deserved rest." People chose sides the way they choose weather. I began to feel marked. My inbox swelled with threats. Anonymous calls, a photo of my car taken outside the grocery store. A voicemail that clicked with a breathing I didn't know. The line went dead. My skin crawled like static. Lena summoned me in the afternoon. We sat in her car with the heater on. "They got a subpoena," Lena said, handing me a printed sheet. My heart hiccuped against my ribs. "The court wanted to know where the evidence came from." "They're saying you fabricated documents," Lena said. Her fingers toyed with a pen. "You need a lawyer." I folded my hands so my fingers didn't tremble. "I have copies," I said. "And timestamps." I had thought of everything, or as much as a person can. I had backup stored in the cloud and on drives hidden in places only I and Lena knew. I felt like a secret inside a house of secrets. That night I visited Evelyn. The hospital lights hummed. The room smelled washed. My grandmother lay with a blanket tucked up to her chin. She breathed in small, deliberate waves. The line on the monitor sang like a quiet clock. I sat by her and took her hand. "It's making people look," I murmured. Her eyes fluttered like curtains. "It will make them see," she whispered, voice thin as paper. Her breath fogged the air. I pressed my forehead to hers. Proof had a face now. Proof had a woman sleeping in fluorescent light. The nurse on duty looked at me with soft, professional eyes. "We have been careful," the nurse said. "But things shift." She tapped a chart with a pen. Her badge read Maria. "You did what you had to do," Maria added, then checked her tone like someone smoothing a hem. I wanted to ask her how many times she had heard orders. I wanted to ask her if Cassidy had asked for extra doses. Maria's hands were steady. She said nothing that would make headlines. She offered me tea in a styrofoam cup. The cup warmed my palms. I wanted to drink the world down and find the courage at the bottom. The legal pressure mounted like rain. Cassidy sent a text that read, "Drop this or we'll make it worse." Her words were courteous and mortal. The message arrived at midnight. My stomach turned over. The city was quiet. I thought about the line on my grandmother's paper. Let them think I'm fading. I thought about the woman on the monitor whose hand lay folded like white cloth. I thought about silence and what it eats. I started to thread things together that week: bank receipts, timestamps, the nurse's schedule, pharmacy bills with names and dosages. I learned to talk to people who didn't expect to be treated like witnesses. I learned how to ask the right questions in a hospital corridor without sounding like a detective. What shifts was Maria on? I would ask. Who signed this delivery? I would say. Sometimes a person would look at me as if I had asked them for their name, and they would answer anyway. Humans are stubbornly helpful when truth lands at their feet. One morning my mailbox had a plain envelope with no return address. Inside was a photo of Evelyn at a park bench years ago. Someone had taken it without consent to remind me she existed before sickness. A post-it was stuck to the photo. She was vulnerable then. Be careful now. The handwriting was not Cassidy's. My hands sweat. Whoever sent it wanted to warn me. Or to scare me. Either way it worked. The community hall replay sat heavy in my throat. The recording had divided relatives into two camps. Some visited Evelyn and pressed small, faithful hands into hers. Others avoided the room as if a smell clung to it. The pastor called for gentle prayer. People prayed for peace while mouths whispered about suits and edits. I felt the divide as something physical. It sat between us like a table. We could not eat across it. On the fifth day a reporter called. "We'd like to talk," the reporter said, voice breezy and dangerous. The interview began with soft questions and ended with promises like ropes. "We want to tell both sides," the reporter said. I handed over copies of every file I trusted. I watched him take notes with his thumb on the edge of the page like a man bookmarking a phrase. He sounded sympathetic until he asked, "Are you worried someone will come after you?" I was worried. My answer was a lie to myself. "No," I said. "I want the truth to be louder than fear." The day after the article ran, a friend called to say that a fundraiser for Evelyn's care had been set up. People were donating money and praising Cassidy for her devotion. Comments on the fundraiser included serenity and support. My chest tightened. The world is a market for narratives. Donations bought people a story they preferred. Money made the narrative sticky. I thought about the bank receipts tucked in my files. Money follows belief. Proof competes with narrative. I felt a sudden cynical clarity. This battle would not be won by anger alone. Late that night a car idled outside my building. Someone tapped my window with the tip of an umbrella. I pulled the curtain back a fraction. The figure held up a small card with a flaming poker face on it. On the back a number. No name. No explanation. My phone vibrated with a text. "Back off, or we take everything." The threat was precise and ordinary. It smelled like organized patience. My hands shook again, and I realized I had been holding my breath for days. I called Lena. "They're escalating," I said. Her voice was calm, but I heard the same brittle edge. "We make the next move smart," she said. "You don't go anywhere alone." I promised her I wouldn't. Then I told my mother to come stay with Evelyn on alternate nights. "You will be seen," I said. "You will be safety in numbers." My mother packed a bag with slippers and a sweater like a woman learning to be brave in small steps. That week I slept little. I kept my grandmother's note in a drawer next to my toothbrush. The paper smelled faintly of lavender. At 3 in the morning I woke to the hum of my phone. It was a single sentence from an unknown number. "You are making enemies." I typed back slowly. "I'm making a choice." The reply came immediately. "Choices make heads roll." The tone was casual. The threat was a fact. I thought about Evelyn's thin hand and the way she had pressed the paper into mine. I thought about silence and the power it had to smooth over crimes. I thought about the drive sitting on a shelf at Lena's house, safe and small. I went to the bathroom and stared at my face in the mirror until I could see the woman who would not bend. I packed a small bag. I put the drive in my coat pocket. I left a note for Lena. "If anything happens, play everything." And I closed the door softly behind me. As I locked my apartment, the hallway light flickered and a shadow lingered by the stairs. A voice I didn't recognize said my name with a smile I knew too well. Would I answer the door? I opened it a crack and the hallway light painted his face in hard planes. He wore a gray coat and a smile that had practiced patience. "Evening," the man said, polite like a neighbor, like a man who wants something small and then takes everything. He held up a card without a name. The card was glossy and blank where a logo might be. "We're from a private care company," the man said. "We handle sensitive things." My chest tightened into a knot the size of a stone. I kept the door only partly open. "I don't need services," I said. My voice sounded small but steady. He shifted his weight and the shoes scuffed like a clock. "We were asked to check on family needs," the man said. "There are concerns about medication adherence." He smiled the same practiced smile I had seen on phones and in comments. "We just want to help." My brain sorted his words into shapes. A setup, a script, a slow play. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me softly. The landing smelled of damp and diesel. My hands did not shake. "Who asked you?" I asked. I wanted names, dates, record numbers. He produced nothing but a polite shrug. "A family member," he said, evasive. "We respond to requests." His eyes flicked past me as if searching for a camera. "We can help tonight if you'd like." His tone was casual like weather. "Who is the family member?" I asked again, and this time I let the patience in my voice feel like a blade. He hesitated. "We respect privacy," the man said. He tried to close the conversation in a neat legal sound. That was when I reached into my coat and showed him the napkin with Lena's handwriting folded tight. He blinked, and for a heartbeat the smile slipped. "Where did you get that?" he asked. My answer came as a small, cold fact. "From the person who found the paper behind a dresser," I said. "From friends of Evelyn who don't want her harmed." He looked past me toward the street like a man calculating distance. "No need for conflict," the man said. "We're here to help." He moved a step closer and a flinch ran through me like static. My mind listed options. Call Lena, slam the door, show him the recording, call the police. I did a small unexpected thing. I asked him his name. "Tom," he said. He said it like a casual truth. "Tom Alvarez," he added, as if adding weight to his polish. I wrote the name in my head like a pin. "Tom Alvarez," I repeated. "Does that come with a license or a contract?" He smiled again, but it was thinner now. "We have paperwork," Tom said. "But family prefers discretion." The word discretion tasted like a threat. "Discretion from whom?" I asked. His smile faltered. "From people who want what is best," Tom said. He spoke as if his words were a kind of currency. I stepped back and closed the door with a slow, controlled motion that made a click sound loud. I locked it and turned the deadbolt. He knocked once, polite and precise. "Please," he said through the wood. "We can make this easier." His voice had the lubricated softness of someone offering an exit. I did not open. I called Lena and kept the phone on speaker. "He's at my door," I whispered. Her voice became a tool, efficient and quick. "Don't let him in," Lena said. "Record everything. Take a picture of his card." I moved the phone so it angled toward the peephole. The man stepped away from the door and scribbled something on the back of his glossy card. He folded it and tucked it into his wallet as if that act would make the card smaller, less threatening. "You're being unreasonable," a voice said sharply from the stairwell above. My sister Cassidy appeared in the doorway of the floor above, like a silhouette cut out of the light. She had a coat slung over her arm and the same calm polish she used at fundraisers. "Cassidy," I said, naming her exactly. She descended the stairs with small, deliberate steps and smiled in the way she always had. "I sent him," my sister Cassidy said, as if she were offering me coffee. Her words were even measured. "He's discreet. He can manage things without noise." For a second I felt a cold, slow tide pull across my ribs. "You sent him?" I asked. My voice did not rise. "You put a stranger at my door with designs on my grandmother's care?" She set her bag on the first step and folded her hands as if in prayer. "We are trying to help," my sister Cassidy said. "This is for Evelyn." Her eyes were calm and clear. Her nails were manicured like the edges of a magazine. "We all want the best for her." The phrase sat in the air like a curtain. I thought of the nurse's voice on the recording. I thought of the schedule that matched the medicine deliveries. I thought of a woman asleep in a room full of clean sheets. I felt a small incandescent clarity burn through my fatigue. You set this up to make her sleep, I said, voice small and precise. You sent someone to help, and to cover your tracks. Her face changed in a microsecond. The practiced smile was still there, but the eyes sharpened. No, my sister Cassidy said, and the denial came out too quickly. I want to care for Grandma. That is all. She moved closer, close enough that I could see the tiny tremor at the corner of her mouth. This is getting ugly, my sister Cassidy added, as if ugliness were a thing that could be filed away. Think about the family. Who paid Tom? I asked. Her silence was the answer I wanted. She lifted her chin as if to argue but did not. Tom cleared his throat and stepped forward then, as if to interrupt a small private argument. Miss, Tom said, using a title like a small weapon, we can arrange immediate respite care. He slid the glossy card across the stair rail toward me where I could photograph it through the crack of the door. The camera on my phone lit and captured the card with hands that were steady. Keep this, I said to Lena through the line. And call the lawyer. My sister Cassidy turned as if offended. You will regret this, my sister Cassidy said soft and low. Her voice did not tremble. I am trying to protect the family from spectacle. I thought of spectacle and how it had already bent their loyalties. Protecting the family from what? I asked. She tilted her head like a woman used to being listened to. From claims, my sister Cassidy said. From lawyers and tabloids. From people who would make money from grief. Her sentence unspooled like a well-practiced speech. I watched her for the tell that had always given her away, the way her left thumb rubbed the ring on her hand. She had worn that thumb rub since childhood when she wanted something and was practiced at waiting. I am not a show, I said. I am my grandmother's granddaughter. The words were small but they landed steady. I felt the building inside me that would not budge. People were watching now from upstairs and below. A neighbor pressed their face to a landing window. The man Tom shifted his weight like a player planning a move. Cassidy's jaw tightened for the first time in days. If you won't let us help, my sister Cassidy said, then you force us into other actions. The phrase was a careful threat folded into concern. I took a breath and remembered Evelyn's handwriting, the way she had chosen me with a note and a trust. I stepped to the door and opened it an inch, enough to let the air move. Tell Tom to leave his contact info in the bill, I said. File it. Make it transparent. No secrets. My voice was small and cold. And don't come back without formal papers. Tom looked relieved and then annoyed. He handed a card and a folded contract through the crack. I slid it into the door and closed it gently. When I shut the door, the hallway seemed to exhale. I locked it again and leaned my back against it. My hands were trembling now with the adrenaline that sits like winter in your palms. That night Cassidy called me 3 times with voices that switched between honey and ice. I did not answer. I sent one message. If you love Evelyn, stop hiding things. If you love her, tell the truth. The reply that came minutes later read, you don't get to play judge. My fingers hovered over a reply. I did not send it. As I placed Tom's card into the envelope with Evelyn's note, I found a small smear of dried medicine on the glossy edge. Someone had handled it with fingers that smelled faintly of lemon soap. The smear matched the pharmacy label dates in my file. The smear connected a stranger, a card, and a plan. I folded the evidence and felt its weight. Tonight a dose was scheduled. Tonight the next decision would be made. Would I wait or would I move first? I moved. I put on a coat that felt like armor and left a spare key with Lena. I told her exactly when I would be back and where the drive was hidden. Her eyes were steady. Be careful, Lena said. And don't do anything you can't undo. I nodded because she couldn't know the shape of what I planned. I did not tell her it was already set. I drove with the heater low and my hands tight on the wheel. The city smelled of wet asphalt and diesel. Traffic lights blinked like patient judges. My mind cataloged each step in a small ledger. Call the pharmacist. Meet the on-duty nurse, record the conversation, upload it to 2 cloud accounts. I stopped at a diner and ate toast with my hands. The server asked if I wanted coffee. Yes, I said. I used my grandmother's name when I ordered and the server offered condolences without knowing why. People make room for grief. People are soft where they don't need to be honest. At the pharmacy I asked for paperwork. We can't give out patients' info, the clerk said. Her name tag read Priscilla. But I can help with general policy. I watched her hands move, the way she slid receipts and labels like small secrets. I asked about how refills were authorized and how long records were kept. We keep things for years, Priscilla said. We track refills and who calls them in. She typed while speaking. If you have a right to access, you can request a printout. I asked how long a request takes. She said 2 days if it's formal. I said, make it fast. She looked at me then, and for the first time in days someone met my eyes like I was a person who had a reason to rush. I called the hospital administration next. I used the phrase patient advocacy and put my voice on a small procedural line. They reassured me with soft sentences. We take these concerns seriously. Bring any evidence, the woman said. We will review. The words were safe and correct. They also bought time. Time had been my enemy so far. I could not let time smooth the edges of proof into rumor. I walked the hospital corridors like a person tracing a map. Linoleum hummed. A vending machine clicked. I found Maria in a supply room, reading a booklet with tired fingers. Maria, I said, naming her the way one names a witness. She blinked and folded the booklet. Yes, Maria said. Her tone was cautious. I need to ask about Evelyn's medications, I said. Who signs for extra doses? Maria checked her watch. There is a chart, she said. There are signatures. Her voice steadied. If someone asked for extra, it would be logged. I asked to see the logs. Her hand hesitated at the edge of protocol and compassion. You can request them through records, Maria said. But I can tell you where the ledgers are. They are not glamorous. She gave me a look that meant she understood fear and urgency. Back in my car I called the reporter and told him to meet me at noon at a small coffee shop off Main. Bring a laptop, I said. Bring a recorder. He arrived with a badge that smelled faintly of ink and day-old perfume. You have more, he asked. I slid him a thumb drive and a paper printout. This will make people listen, I said. He hesitated. Reporters are hungry for endings. We will verify, he said. We will corroborate. The sentence was a promise with teeth. He left with the drive balanced like a small animal. I filed an online complaint with the state nursing board and attached what I could. The form asked for dates and descriptions. I answered in clean sentences. I uploaded the scans and the picture of Tom's card. Filing felt like closing a zipper on a case. It felt like making the world have structure. I printed confirmation and folded it into my bag. That afternoon I went to Evelyn's room. My mother June was there with a sweater pulled around her shoulders. You did the right thing, my mother June said, like someone rehearsing a confession. Her eyes shone. I can't believe I didn't see it. I held her hand and watched the monitor tick. You did what you thought best, I said. My voice was steady. I did not tell her that Cassidy had called with threats. I did not tell her that Tom had been at my door. Some things are weapons. Some secrets break people. I chose which to hold and which to let out. Later, the reporter called with a small, controlled excitement. He had checked the pharmacy logs. He had a pharmacist willing to speak off the record. He had a copy of the delivery manifest with dates that matched suspicious entries. We can run this, he said. But we want a statement from you. Live. I felt the room tilt. Live meant immediacy. Live meant no retreat. When? I asked. Tomorrow morning, he said. 8 a.m. local. I thought of Evelyn sleeping under clinic light. I thought of faces in a hall. I thought of what it means to take a step that cannot be unmade. That night my sister Cassidy sat across from me at the kitchen table with a porcelain mug that steamed. Don't, my sister Cassidy said. This will make you look like a villain. Her voice was a practiced knife. We can fix things. Quietly. She reached across the table and touched my hand. Her nails were red, perfect. The motion had the same tenderness as planting a trap. My sister Cassidy said, We love Evelyn. We only want stability. I looked at her directly. Stability isn't sedation, I replied. You asked someone to be discreet. Discretion has a bill. Her jaw tightened. You could ruin family, my sister Cassidy said. I could save her, I said simply. My words were not loud. They did not have to be. They were small, cold facts. She laughed once, short and brittle. You really believe a story will change people's minds? My sister Cassidy asked. Money and pictures do. I thought of the fundraiser and the stream of donations. Sometimes truth does win, I said. Sometimes people put down their forks and look. At 2 a.m, I sat with the drive and watched the hospital live stream of the reporter's site. Social media is a river that rushes without waiting. I typed an anchor post with a scanned note and a single sentence. My grandmother trusted me with the truth. I scheduled it for dawn with a timestamp and a link to the reporter's live segment. I breathed in. I slept for an hour. The morning came like a held breath. The reporter interviewed me in a small room with bad fluorescent lights. He asked clear questions and left space for truth. Why now? He asked. Because she trusted me, I said. Because quiet kills. I handed him the documents. He nodded and loaded the files. The segment went live at 8. The sound of my voice on that clip was flat and steady. I watched the feed explode with comments. People shared, reposted, debated. Some defended Cassidy. Some wrote prayers. Some wrote curses. The world is a loud place. By noon, the hospital had opened an internal investigation. The nursing board had logged my complaint and sent a notice. The fundraiser page had hidden its donor list. Cassidy's lawyer called and then stayed silent. I received a text from an unknown number. Stop now. I replied, I am not stopping. My fingers did not shake. When I returned to Evelyn's room that evening, the air smelled like lemon and disinfectant. Maria was there, hands folded. We are documenting things now, she said quietly. Her voice held something like relief. There are others who noticed. I rested my hand on Evelyn's and felt the small heat of living skin. She knew to tell someone. I whispered. She knew to ask me. The monitor thinned its beeps into the night. I felt the fight move from private to public. Evidence had weight. Evidence could move people. That night late, a package arrived for me with no return address. Inside was a small amber vial and a handwritten note. For her, if you think she needs it. The vial rattled like a small promise. Whoever sent it wanted to change the story again. Would I take it to the lab? Or would I let it be the last piece that made people finally listen? Would I take it to the lab? Or would I let it be the last piece that made people finally listen? I took it to the lab. I wrapped the tiny vial in tissue like a relic and drove with the heater off so my hands could stay steady. The lab smelled of bleach and paper. A technician named Aaron took the vial with gloved fingers and placed it under a light that made the glass glow. We can run a screening, Aaron said. It will show compounds quickly. Full analysis takes longer. He spoke like someone who handles other people's truths every day. I left my number and watched the vial go into a machine that hummed like a distant engine. Waiting felt like listening for a train in the dark. I sat on a hard chair and checked my phone until my thumbs hurt. Lena paced in the parking lot and then sat beside me and folded her hands into her jacket. If this is a setup, Lena said, we will see it. Her voice was a thin thread of calm. I wanted to promise her everything would be fine. I didn't. The call came in the afternoon. There are traces of a sedative, Aaron said. Not a typical sleeping pill. It looks like something used for procedural sedation. We can quantify it. The word sedation landed like a small bomb. I repeated it so my ears would believe sedative. Someone had given my grandmother something she did not need. Someone had decided she should sleep deeper. I felt the world tilt into an angle I had only imagined. The lab emailed a report with numbers and timestamps. I printed it and tucked it into a folder. Evidence grows in neat stacks and then it makes people nervous. I sent copies to the reporter and to the lawyer. The reporter answered with an immediate, "We can run this." The lawyer answered with legalese and a request for meetings. The hospital called and asked for copies. Suddenly there were many hands reaching for the same small thing. My sister Cassidy called that night with a voice that tried to be reasonable. "You have to stop," my sister Cassidy said. "This is destroying us." Her breath came in short, rehearsed pieces. "You're turning family into headlines." I could hear the lawyer speaking behind her. A soft cadence of strategy. "If you love Evelyn, step back." Her tone had the practiced softness of someone offering a trap. "I love Evelyn," I said. "That's why I'm not stepping back." My words were short like small stones. You sent someone to my door. A smear matched your care card. A stranger left a vial at my building. Now the lab finds sedation. If you love her, tell the truth." There was a pause long enough for the city to move between us. "You don't know the whole story," my sister Cassidy said finally. "There are reasons." I knew that phrase. I had heard it my whole life when a truth would have made them awkward. "Reasons that protect you," I added in my head. "Reasons that line pockets." Heat rose through my chest. I told her I would not be bullied. I told her I would not let Evelyn be erased by neat explanations and thin smiles. She hung up and the line clicked like a verdict. The next morning the hospital moved faster than it had before. Records were pulled and secured. The nursing supervisor asked to speak in a conference room with a paper cup of coffee and a face that looked relieved to be allowed to act. "We have flagged several irregularities," the supervisor said. "We will place certain staff on administrative leave until this is resolved." The words were small justice. Maria came into the room with tired eyes and a hand that still trembled. "I signed nothing extra," Maria said quietly, "but I kept notes. I will give them to you." Her voice was the kind that holds someone steady. The reporter published the story with the lab report attached. The article was careful and sharp. Comments flooded like a storm surge. Some people were outraged. Some were skeptical. Some sent Evelyn's photo with kindness. The fundraiser page froze comments and updated a statement that read like someone trying to stitch a wound closed. Cassidy's lawyer called again, this time with a softer legal tone. "We need to think about reputation," he said. "This is delicate. Reputation is a fragile currency." I watched how quickly people counted its value. Friends texted with advice that smelled like caution. An old neighbor called and asked if I was safe. A man I had never met offered to drive me to the hearing. The world had tilted. Proof now made committees meet. At home I found an anonymous message waiting. "You are meddling with things that will break you." The handwriting was typed, clean, unfeeling. I put the message in the file and named it Threat 3. Threats make noise. Noise either drowns you or wakes you up. I chose the latter. The hospital scheduled an emergency review board. The community prepared for a hearing about Evelyn's care and the possibility of changing guardianship. For the first time since this began, there would be a formal place where sworn testimony mattered. I spent the next days collecting witnesses. Lena wrote a short statement about finding the original note behind the dresser. Maria wrote a detailed account of medicine logs and shift changes. The pharmacist agreed to a recorded interview about refill authorizations. Each testimonial felt like another brick in a small wall I was building. Cassidy's camp tried to shore things up. They produced character witnesses and photographs showing warm smiles at the fundraiser. My mother visited and cried at my shoulder. "I don't want this," my mother June said. "I want her to be safe." Her voice trembled in the middle like a rope under weight. "I am scared of what will happen if this gets worse." I held her hand and told her that the truth could be kinder than a quiet lie. The night before the review I hardly slept. I arranged documents in piles that matched the sequence of events. I practiced my words in a hallway mirror until my jaw relaxed. I set alarms and backed up files to a cloud account and to 2 drives in different locations. My life had become a series of small preparations for large reveals. At 3 in the morning I heard a soft knock and a whisper under the door. Lena slid a folded piece of paper with a single sentence. "If they try to scare you, speak louder." I pressed the paper to my heart. The morning of the review the room smelled like coffee and authority. People sat in rows and shifted. Cassidy entered with a face ordained for pity. She hugged our mother and kissed the air with practiced affection. I sat with my folder and felt the weight of proof like a steady stone against my ribs. The board called names. We were sworn in. When my turn came I spoke plainly. "My name is Hannah," I said, naming myself as my grandmother had named me. My grandmother Evelyn left me a note. She asked me to guard her truth. I found pharmacy receipts that don't match authorized refills. I have an audio file where a nurse confirms extra dosing. I have a vial that tested positive for sedation. My voice was small and sure. I watched the board take notes. My sister Cassidy's lawyer objected to details. "Hearsay," he said like a man reciting a spell. The board allowed testimony and then asked for corroboration. That was my moment. Maria stood and repeated what she had seen on her shifts. The pharmacist confirmed dates. Lena described where she found the note. The pieces fit like a map. The board asked for immediate protective measures for Evelyn. Outside the room, cameras clicked. The city spun conversations. There was a sense that things were shifting irreversibly. People who had been quiet now had to pick sides. I looked through the doorway and saw Cassidy step outside and take a breath like someone who used to command rooms. She looked small and enormous at once. At the end of the review, the board ordered a temporary guardian appointed and an independent medical review. They announced a hearing for the guardianship claim and set a date for public testimony. My sister Cassidy texted me one sentence. "If you think you've won, wait." I typed back. "This isn't about winning. This is about Evelyn being heard. Tomorrow at 9 we all stand in front of a judge. Would the truth be enough to keep her safe?" The judge's gavel was small and final. The courtroom smelled of paper and coffee and something that tasted like consequence. I sat with my folder on my knees and felt the pages like armor. People had come. Reporters dotted the back row like flies. Cameras blinked. My name had become a headline. When the judge called the session to order, his voice folded the room into quiet. "We will hear testimony," he said. The words felt ordinary and terrible at once. My sister Cassidy sat to my left with a face practiced for sorrow. Her lawyer held a pad like a shield. My mother June sat behind her and gripped my cousin Lena's hand like a prayer. I stood when my name was called. "State your name for the record," the court clerk said. "Hannah Pierce," I replied. Saying my name aloud felt like claiming ground. "Do you swear to tell the truth?" the clerk asked. "I do," I said. The box of oath felt like a small window opening. I spoke plainly. "My grandmother Evelyn wrote a note. She asked me to guard the truth. I found a vial that tested positive for sedation. I have pharmacy records, audio, and witnesses." The judge leaned forward and peered at my file. "We will review all evidence," he said. "Proceed with your witnesses." My chest beat slow and steady. Proof is measured by testimony and signatures. I had both. Maria walked in like a woman arriving from long shifts. "My name is Maria Santos," she said, and the room listened. I logged medications. I did not authorize extra doses without orders. Her hands rested in her lap like someone offering something honest. She described dates, initials, and a missing signature. The pharmacist confirmed refill records. Lena described finding the note behind a dresser. Each voice fit into the map I had made. Then Cassidy took the stand. She sat with a composed breath and folded her hands carefully. My sister Cassidy Whitfield said, "We loved Evelyn. We only wanted stability." Her voice was clear and practiced. The judge asked direct questions. Cassidy answered with patience and then with precise denial. "I never asked for anything harmful," my sister Cassidy said. Her eyes flicked to the gallery and found a face that validated her. Her story had warmth and sticky photographs. The lawyer tried to thread doubt into the seams. He called experts and tried to show gaps. He suggested edits and manipulations. He asked whether the lab chain of custody was perfect. He argued that emotions warp memory. I watched their strategy like a surgeon watches a cut. I expected the moves. I had anticipated every counter with backup files and witnesses. We had built redundancy into truth. The judge's face was a map of small decisions. After hours of testimony and cross-examination, he asked to recess. There was a hush like the pause before a tide turns. Outside the courtroom, people clustered and whispered as if the air had become precious. I stepped into the hallway and felt a hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing," my mother June said, crying quietly. "I don't know what I thought before." Her voice cracked open into a dozen small regrets. I held her hand and let her grief be honest. When the judge returned, he read the interim order. "Given the evidence presented," he said, "the court finds probable cause to appoint an independent temporary guardian and to order immediate medical review." The words landed like small stones. They were not a verdict, but they were protection. Cassidy's face paled and then hardened. She mouthed something I could not hear. Her lawyer scribbled notes with a hand that did not shake. We walked out into a changed world. Cameras peppered the entrance. Reporters circled like buzzards. The reporter who had first called me thrust a microphone forward. "How do you feel?" he asked. I thought of Evelyn asleep back in the hospital room, and of the tiny vial that had made proof into law. "I feel like truth is finally moving," I said. "Not for revenge. For Evelyn." My voice sounded small and true on camera. The hospital moved quickly after that. Independent doctors reviewed charts and prescriptions. An appointed guardian stepped in with a form that smelled of sealant and legal certainty. Evelyn was moved to a different floor for observation. The nursing staff changed schedules like a new orchestra rearranging its players. The review found lapses. It did not name motives. It named practices that endangered a vulnerable patient. Cassidy's world tightened. The fundraiser pages froze. The lawyer sent a letter suggesting mediation. My sister Cassidy texted me one morning. "Meet me at the park." She wanted a conversation away from microphones. I went because I wanted to see the woman who had been my sister before headlines split us. We sat on a bench under a maple that had shed its leaves early. The air smelled like rain and damp earth. My sister Cassidy said, "I didn't want this to hurt anyone." Her voice trembled. She pressed her fingers into the bench slats. I thought extra sleep would ease her pain. I looked at the ring on her hand and the way her voice curled for forgiveness. "Where did Tom come from?" I asked. She stared like a woman confronted with a stranger she had loved. "I called someone to help," my sister Cassidy said. "I didn't think." She didn't finish. Her sentence fell like a broken thread. "People use help to hide the hard parts," I said. "You used it to hide what you didn't want to face." I named it plainly. She flinched, then closed her eyes. "We thought we were protecting Mom," my sister Cassidy said. "We were scared of losing her and of losing face." She looked small and honest. She had the look of a woman realizing what her choices do to others. Forgiveness was not a thing that came easily. I had built a wall of proof to stop harm. That wall also held memory. We had both chosen patterns. She had chosen softness that sometimes became sedation. I had chosen exposure that sometimes became spectacle. We sat with that mutual truth like two people holding a shared fracture. Evelyn's condition stabilized under the independent review. The sedation levels had been reduced, and her care plan changed. She slept in shorter cycles and then opened her eyes one morning with a look like an old photograph returning to clarity. When I sat at her bedside and she reached for my hand, her fingers were thin but real. "You did well," she whispered. The voice was a fragile bell. "You kept my paper." I pressed my forehead to hers and cried small, honest tears. People changed their stances slowly. Some relatives apologized. Some friends retreated. Social feeds filled with debates then moved on. Reality is a river that wears banks down over time. The reporter wrote a follow-up that balanced caution with anger. The nursing board announced policy reviews. Small reforms crept into practice. Proof had ripples. My sister Cassidy retreated for a while. She called rarely. When she did, she was quiet. Once she left a bouquet at the nurse's station with a note that said, "I'm sorry." My mother June visited Evelyn more often and sat with her sleeve rolled down like a woman practicing presence. Lena moved in closer to help with errands and to make sure the drives and files were safe. In the end, the court assigned guardianship temporarily to an independent advocate. It was not the drama we had expected. The judge did not declare war. He declared boundaries. He ordered supervision and monitoring. That felt like a small mercy. It meant Evelyn would be protected from choices made in private. Months later, as the season shifted and the maples browned, I found myself in a quiet kitchen with a mug and a folder labeled Truth. I turned the pages and traced the dates like Braille. Proof had cost us many things. It had cost family ease and a certain kind of belonging. It had cost quiet dinners and easy smiles. It had also saved a life from being dimmed without consent. I had wanted a single thing: for Evelyn to be heard. I write this now with her hand a memory warm in mine. People ask if I regret the noise. Sometimes I look into the mirror and wonder if things would be gentler otherwise. Then I remember my grandmother's handwriting and the small, decisive way she had trusted me. The paper had weight. The paper had made me steady. I kept her paper, and in doing so I kept her voice. They cannot fold that away. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you like the story.